Madhava Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Satashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Satashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Satashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Chekaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Ruita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayat Nasta Prayeshu Avadirishunatim Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 14th chapter, text number 5, is that right? Text number 5? 10. It's 10. 7. 10. Oh, 10. Okay. Ditiruvacha Esha Mam Tvatkrite Vidvan Kama Ata Sharashanaha Dunoti Dinam Vikramya Rambham Iva Matangajaha Ditiruvacha Eshemam Tvam Krite Vidvam Kama Tadsasharnaha Dunoti Dinam Vikramya Rambhamiva Matangajaha Eshemam Tvatkrite Vidvam Kama Ata Sarashanaha Dunoti Dinam Vikramya Bam Iva Itang Gajaha. Itam Vam Kritate Vivam Kama Ata Samsharshanaha Dunoti Dinam Vikramya Rambam Eva Iti Uvacha Eshamam Tvatkrite Vidvan Kama Ata Sarashanaha Dunoti Dinam Vikramya Rambam Eva Matangajaha. Women? Ladies? Diti Uvacha Eshamam Tvatkrite Vidvan Kama Ata Sahasharanaha Duna Dinam Vikramya Rambam Eva Matangajaha. Ditihi Uvacha. Beautiful Diti said, Eshaha, all these, Mam, unto me, Tvatkrite, for you, Vidvan, O learned one, Kamaha, Cupid, Atasarsanaha, taking his arrows, Dunoti, distresses, Dinam, poor me, Vikramya, attacking. Rambam, banana tree. Eva, like. Metam, Gojaha, mad elephant. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. In that place, the beautiful Dhriti expressed her desire. O learned one, Cupid is taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly, as a mad elephant troubles a banana tree. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Beautiful Diti, seeing her husband absorbed in trance, began to speak loudly, not attempting to attract him by bodily expressions. She frankly said that her whole body was distressed by sex desire because of her husband's presence, just as a banana tree is troubled by a mad elephant. It is not natural for her to agitate her husband when he was in trance, but she could not control her strong sexual appetite. Her sex desire was like a mad elephant, and therefore it was the prime duty of her husband to give her all protection by fulfilling her desire. The verse again. In that place, the beautiful Diti expressed her desire. O learned one, Cupid is taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly, as a mad elephant troubles a banana tree. Mukam karoti bachalam bhangam langayate girim yadkari patarham bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. There are very many subtle things going on in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. For example, at the time of conception, whatever, supposedly, according to the Vedic literature, whatever one is thinking determines what is going to be in the future body. And if one is thinking about devotional life, one is likely to beget Vaishnava children. So the philosophy of Krishna consciousness can be complex. And it's so complex that sometimes a man can become a woman in the next life and vice versa. There was this story of the sages of Dandakaranya who prayed to become women in their next life so they could have a relationship with Krishna as female to male. And that actually happened. And also, sometimes devotees can become demons in a future life, and demons can become devotees. There was the example of Jaya and Vijaya, who were in Vaikuntha as doorkeepers and took birth in future bodies as demons, and were very against Krishna consciousness. And then in a future birth, they regained their position as doorkeepers of Vaikuntha. So the philosophy is very subtle. Demons can become devotees, devotees can become demons, and vice versa. And also there's the example of Vitrasura, who was Chitraketu in a previous life, a king, and then became a demon in the next life, and then after that went back to Godhead. So it's a very subtle thing. And here we have an example of these doorkeepers taking birth as demons, partly as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu taking birth from Diti, because Diti was in a materialistic frame of mind when it happened. So all this was arranged by Krishna. The devotees became demons, and later on the demons became devotees. And it was specifically arranged by Krishna that Diti became overwhelmed by by materialistic desire. And in that way, she gave birth to these demons. So where they take birth and who they took birth from has all been pre-planned by Krishna. So it's a very subtle, difficult thing to understand. The philosophy of Krishna consciousness can be very, very complex and very difficult to understand, especially for newcomers. They might think that belief in the transmigration of the soul is just a fanciful concept. But from the very beginning of Prabhupada's lecturing, he just presumed that everyone in his audience believed in the fact of reincarnation or transmigration of the soul. So some very subtle things take place. And another subtle thing that takes place is that people who commit suicide are often become ghosts in the next life. And that's also true, partly true in Christianity, that people who who are guilty of suicide can become ghosts, and it's often happened. And throughout Prabhupada's teachings, he has said that this is possible. If one becomes commits suicide, one can become a demon in or a disembodied soul or a ghost in the next life. Sometimes these ghosts, not all the time, but sometimes, most of them are mischievous. They try to inhabit or what they call possess bodies. Not long ago, about 30 or 40 years ago, I guess I was a devotee. I was staying in a friend's house just for a couple of days, and one evening he went away, and I thought, well, he's got a TV, so I'll watch this film called The Exorcist, because I always wanted to see what it was about. Some of you may have seen it, some of you are hearing or seeing this lecture. And it was a very scary thing, because I was watching it at night and it scared the daylights out of me. I still remember how scared I was. But it was scary because it was based on true events. The person who made the film, I think his name was Blake, William Blake, was a student at George Washington University. And most people don't know that George Washington University, which is located in a suburb of Washington, D.C., it's actually in Washington, D.C., is a Jesuit university. And so he wrote this book, and later on made the film, was one of the directors of the film, because he was taught by the Jesuits that there is such a thing as transmigration and ghostly bodies. So this was based on a true event. Not completely, it wasn't exactly true, but it was based on truism. The truth of the matter is that the person who was actually possessed was a young boy, not a young girl, as was in the book or the film. Anyway, those things happen. And Prabhupada talks about ghosts being an disembodied living being. And there's a place in Western India called Gaya where it's a tradition that people in India go to this place to pray for their ancestors that they aren't going to hover bodiless for a long time, that they can somehow, if they're ghosts, they can inhabit a human body again. So it's a very common thing. And there was a time when a person, a Mr. Samani, a Gujarati man, who used to come to the Bhaktivedanta Manor every Sunday and make a life member. Every time he came with another person who became a life member. And then, unfortunately, this man departed. And I was asked to come to the seance, not exactly a seance, but there's a tradition in India that when somebody dies, there's they hold usually some kind of a prayer meeting or a kirtan. And it depends on whether someone is a Shudra or a sannyasi or whatever he is, or what part of the country, whether he's Gujarati. But these were Gujarati people. And so they dressed up the body of Samani, of his departed soul, the body, in a suit and tie, and they invited me to come because they had a kind of prayer meeting that lasted for quite some time, at least a week or two. And it was kind of gruesome because they laid him out on this kind of a cot, like they call them gurneys, and there was a chanting session there, so I had to go to that. And Prabhupada talks about this a lot. And in real life, there was it was when Prabhupada first came to England. It was in 1970. There was I was staying along with Prabhupada and a few devotees at John Lennon's estate in Tittenhurst. And they had hired John and Yoko had hired a bricklayer. And he was not a very tall man. He was about maybe 155 or something like that, tall. And kind of stout and very muscular and red-haired. And but he heard this sound, which sounded like bodies being dragged in chains. This is a true event in just above where they lived. But he didn't want to tell John and Yoko about it because he was a bit too conservative, and he was a very quiet person. But his wife, Mrs. McDougall, his name was McDougall, was just the opposite. And so she confided to some of the devotee ladies that there was this sound, and her husband couldn't sleep at night, and he had confided to her that, well, he might lose his job if this continues, because he couldn't sleep at night because he kept hearing this sound above in the attic, above where they lived. So one of the female devotees told Prabhupada about this, and he asked her. He said, "Well, she said to Prabhupada, well, I have reported this to John and Yoko, and they said that they hired a professional exorcist, and he reported back to them that after trying, he couldn't do anything because the ghost was too powerful." That's what he said. The ghost was too powerful. So this lady asked Prabhupada, well, what should be done? Is there any way we can drive away this ghost? So he said what he has said in many lectures, that ghosts cannot remain in the presence of chanting of the holy name. They're very, and they go away. So she said that if we have kirtan, do you think that we could drive away the ghost? And Prabhupada kind of nodded his head. Yes, that's possible. And she said, well, what should we do? How should we do it? And he said, well, pick a cloudy day. Cloudy days are not unusual in London, because London always, every day, but it's often very cloudy. It's a very cloudy place. And go to that house and tell the McDougals that they have to abandon the house for about 5 hours. And you have a kirtan that lasts 5 hours, playing mridanga and kartals very loudly, and chant Hare Krishna, of course, and blow the conch shell many, many times throughout the 5-hour kirtan. So they did this. And I first heard about it not first, but I heard that it was a successful exorcism. And the McDougals didn't want to go away because they lived in that. It was a little shack, kind of a house in John Lennon's estate. And she said that, well, we don't want to go, but if that's what's required, we'll do it. And she said it's a bit damp outside. It wasn't really raining, but it was kind of misty, and England is kind of a miserable place. That's one of the reasons why I didn't stay there for my whole life. Anyway, she said, well, we'll bring our brollies. That's the Scottish word for umbrella, brolly. And what she told the lady devotee is that they were Christians. She said, I think this is the work of the deil. That's a Scottish word for devil. So they ultimately went away, and they sat on a bench with their brollies, and they were obedient because Mrs. McDougall told them that this is what Prabhupada said. This is how we can drive away this very powerful demon. So one of the ways I heard about this is that Prabhupada used to give lectures in a place called Conway Hall. It was in Red Lion Square, part of London, very close to the temple that was in Berry Place, near an underground station called Holborn Underground Station. And Prabhupada gave about 13 lectures there. And one time I was there, and I wasn't sitting in the audience. There were about 200 or 300 or sometimes 400 people sitting listening to Prabhupada's lecture. And he gave a talk every day. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't exactly dark outside, but it was getting close to that, dusk. And he arranged that he gave a talk from a temple, a table, kind of like these tables outside. I don't know if we have one here, but a lot of devotees have these kind of trestle tables, they call them. So he had one that he sat on, and on the one next to him sat his deities, Radha and Krishna deities that I don't know where he got them. And in the middle was the harmonium player and lead singer, that was Jamuna. And so I wasn't in the audience. I was just kind of wandering around in the lobby of this place, Conway Hall, and trying to organize things. I was a bit of you might say, an organizer. And I heard Prabhupada say, and we drove the ghost away from John Lennon's house. And I thought, what? Why is he saying John Lennon's? And why is he saying John Lennon's house? And why is he bringing up this thing about the ghost? But he actually said that. And I thought, well, I got to listen to the rest of this lecture very carefully because he's saying some unusual things. Anyway, the Mrs. McDougall, the following day, reported back to the devotees, well, she she and her husband got a good night's rest because they didn't hear the sounds of the attic of chains and what sounded like a body being dragged. So the exorcism seemed to be successful. So that's a true event that actually happened at John Lennon's estate. And then the bricklayer resumed his activity. I think besides building a brick wall, he was doing something else. He was kind of a handyman. A short, very muscular kind of guy, and very quiet. But he didn't want to admit that he was being kept awake at night. And after this exorcism was successful, he got a good night's sleep. So that was the event that took place, and so it was a successful event, and it was all masterminded by Prabhupada, who told them what to do. And even the devotees didn't know for sure it was going to happen, but they were in the role of exorcist, and they were successful. So this was how the man kept his livelihood, kept his friendship with John and Yoko, and later on, of course, we were the Lennons, or Yoko. She wasn't married; they weren't married. Asked us to leave that place and asked to go there. So that was the event that happened, and it was a true event. And so some of you have maybe who are watching or listening to this lecture have had experience with ghosts. But another thing that happened was that Prabhupada once inhabited a house somewhere in India. I don't know where it was or when it was, but it was a kind of a haunted house. And the reason we thought it was a haunted house was that the people that lived there or nearby warned Prabhupada that this is haunted and there's ghosts in that house. They come at night and there's ghosts. So Prabhupada said, well, he just took it anyway because it was a very inexpensive rental because people didn't want to rent a haunted house because it was a house that was full of ghosts. So one night Prabhupada was translating or doing his usual work, and he said that this is all recorded. He said he could understand that there was a ghost present. So the devotees asked Prabhupada, this was told in a lecture. He said, I could understand there was a ghost there. And then people asked Prabhupada, well, what did you do? And he said, well, I started chanting Hare Krishna. And then what happened, they asked him. And he said, and then the ghost went away. So even though it was haunted and there were regular visitations by ghosts, Prabhupada had applied the formula that if you chant Hare Krishna, the ghost will go away. And as he said to devotees, it went away because he chanted Hare Krishna. So that was one of the first things first times I heard about a ghost. And Prabhupada has written about it and talked about it in several places about ghosts. And people are very inspired by ghosts. And he said, what a ghost is, it's a disembodied being. And sometimes they're very mischievous because they haunt or they try to possess another body. And in this story that William Blake wrote, the very powerful demon inhabits the body of a 12-year-old woman. And it's so powerful that some of you may have seen this movie. The person who is the exorcist is inhabited by the ghost, and very powerful ghost causes him to jump through a closed window, and to his death he fell down a long flight of stairs. And that place, that stairway, is, as far as I know, is still there. And we used to, well, all the devotees in the Potomac Temple used to go to Georgetown and have kirtan, and we recognized that stairway. I recognized it anyway as part of a film where this guy fell to his death. So there can be very powerful ghosts that can not only inhabit bodies and possess bodies, but can cause people to die or cause the exorcist to die. And they can inhabit whoever they wanted. So that's a true event. That was based on a true thing. So much for all this. Are there any comments or questions or realizations anyone has about anything that has to do with what I've said? It doesn't have to be about what I've said. It can be about anything, really. Yes?
My understanding of the pastime with Driti and Kashyapa, isn't it, her husband, was that she wanted to conceive just at the wrong time, wasn't it? Was that is that why they had that?
That's according to the verse and according to what follows in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it was the wrong time to have a materialistic desire, and as it was arranged by Krishna, somehow Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha and other demons had to be born. They had to appear on earth, because in the spiritual world there's no conflict between Krishna and there's no demons in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan. So he had to take birth in the material world somewhere. And so because she was very possessed, we might say. I don't mean possessed in the form of a demon, but she had this desire to have sexual life with Kashyapa, and due to this, these demons were born, and Krishna did his work fighting them, which is one of the reasons he appeared on earth, to combat. And sometimes Prabhupada mentions that very wealthy people have arranged for their followers to have mock fights with them, sort of like demonic. And that's kind of like what Krishna did. It was a real fight, and they really died, but they took birth again as devotees either in Vaikuntha or as in the doorway of Vaikuntha. So we have time for about one more comment or question. Anyone? Otherwise, we'll just call it quits there. Oh, there's one more. Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. How are we supposed to understand how it's Krishna's arrangement, but also the free will? Like, with this one, the demons have to be born, but she's also got the desires there. But then how do we relate that to ourselves when we have desires, but we're trying to be a devotee?
Well, the very mystic aspect of Krishna is that he arranges everything. Sometimes he arranges for temples and people to chant Hare Krishna, but he also arranges for sometimes people, even devotees have died in battle, like in Ukraine. Devotees have died because there's a war between Ukraine and Russia right now. But everything is arranged. So even though the devotees are killed, they can be reborn as devotees, and they can attain perfection. In one case, Prabhupada was asked after a lecture, is it possible for devotees, I think I mentioned this, to go back to Godhead in their next life? And Prabhupada didn't answer immediately. He just thought for a while, and then he said, yes, it is possible. And then as he was walking out the door, he pointed to this person who asked the question. He said, and waved his index finger at this person and said, but don't take advantage. In other words, it can happen that you can go back to God in your next birth, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it happens. And there's the story of the friendly ghost that you know about, Haridas, who had some material desire, a very, very slight material desire, and he serenaded Krishna, even though he was a ghost, and he was a friendly ghost. And Krishna was very obliged to hear that. I mean, Lord Chaitanya was very obliged to hear it. He was present then, and he was singing to Lord Chaitanya, and Krishna, of course, heard this song. So I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.